Okay, today we're going to be talking all about angles. So, a little bit of a review first, and then we'll get into it. When you have an angle, one thing you should know, vocabulary, is that the point that they meet is called the vertex. Okay, so you have a vertex, and then you have two sides. And you name an angle by using a letter from the side, then the vertex, and then a letter from the other side. So this angle would be called angle ABC because it goes from A to B to C. The vertex has to be the letter in the middle. Okay, and then a review that we should know are types of angles very quickly. Okay, we have acute angles, which are less than 90, right angles, which are 90-degree angles. We have obtuse angles, which are greater than 90, and we have straight angles, which are exactly 180 degrees. Okay? This is all information that you need to know to talk about these angles today. Okay, the vertex is where they meet. You name it by using a point from the side, the vertex, and the other side. You need to know right angles make 90 degrees, straight angles make 180. Okay? Now, today is going to be a lot of vocabulary. So, you're going to need to write it all down. You're going to need to make sure that you know it and understand it. Alright, because today we're going to be talking about angle pairs. Okay, how angles are related to one another. Okay, the first angle pair that we're going to be talking about is vertical angles. Okay, and vertical angles are formed by two lines, and they are the angles that are across from each other when those two lines cross. Okay, so we have two lines crossing, and notice that it forms four angles. So I call them angle 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the vertical angles are the ones across from each other. Okay, 1 and 4 are not across from each other. They're not vertical. Okay, 1 and 2, not vertical. So angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles. Okay, but also angle 2 and angle 4 are vertical angles, because 2 and 4 are across from each other, and 1 and 3 are across from each other. Okay, now, why does that really matter? Okay, it matters because if two angles are vertical, then you know something about them. Okay, because vertical angles are congruent. Okay, and congruent means that they're the same, that they are equal. Okay, so 1 and 3 are vertical, therefore 1 and 3 are congruent. So if angle 1 was 45 degrees, well then that means that angle 3 is 45 degrees. And since 2 and 4 are vertical, 2 and 4 are congruent, which means if angle 2 was 135 degrees, that angle 4 would also be 135 degrees. Okay, so that's what you should know about vertical angles. First, how to locate them. They're directly across from each other. They share a vertex, but they don't share any sides. Okay, they're directly across from each other, formed by two lines, and you should know that if they're vertical angles, they are congruent. All right, our next angle pair is adjacent angles. Okay, adjacent literally means next to or beside. Okay, so adjacent angles are angles that have the same vertex and share one side. So they're literally right next to each other. Alright, so see, I have a vertex. Both of these angles share the same vertex point, and then both of them share this side, because this side is part of this angle and this side is part of this angle. Therefore, these two angles are adjacent. Okay, now notice I've named the whole thing angle A, B, C. And I've named each of the two smaller angles, angle 1 and angle 2. Okay? Now, the one thing that you need to know about adjacent angles is that if you add the two smaller angles, they equal the larger angle. Okay? Which should make sense, because if I add angle 1 and angle 2, don't I get angle ABC? Okay, so that's all it is. This is almost common sense. Okay? Because these two put together make the big one, so if you add them together, it equals the big one. Okay, so for example, if angle 1 was 70 degrees and angle 1 was 30 degrees and angle 2 was 70 degrees, then if you add them together, you get the measure of angle ABC, which is 100 degrees. Okay, so again, you need to know how to locate adjacent angles, and you need to know that if you add them together, it equals the total angle. Alright, our next angle pair is complementary angles. And complementary angles are just two angles that add up to 90 degrees. Okay, so if you see, I have two angles here, and total they're 90 degrees. Well, that makes angle 1 and angle 2 complementary, because when I put them together, they're 90 degrees. Now notice, complementary angles are also adjacent angles. They share a vertex, they share this side. So they're adjacent, but they're special adjacent angles because they're adjacent angles that add up to exactly 90 degrees. They add up to exactly a right angle. Okay, so the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 90 degrees. That's what you should know about complementary angles. Okay, so for example, if angle 2 was 65, then what's angle 1? Well, x plus 65 equals 90, so you can subtract the 65 from the 90, and you get x equals 25. So angle 1 is 25 degrees. Okay, so you need to be able to recognize and calculate complementary angles. Alright, now the next one is similar. It's called supplementary. Okay, complementary is when they add to 90. Supplementary is when two angles add up to 180 degrees. Okay, so complementary makes a right angle. Supplementary make a straight angle. Okay, so first you should recognize supplementary because they make a straight line when you put them together. Okay, I just have a straight line with another line coming off. That means these two put together give me a straight angle. That means they must be complementary. Supplementary. So that means they have to add up to 180. So the thing you should know about supplementary angles is that if you add them together, it equals 180. Okay, because a straight line means a straight angle. Okay, so again, if I told you that angle 1 was 70 degrees, you should be able to find angle 2. Okay, I have 70 plus x equals 180. So I subtract the 70 to the other side, and I get that x equals 110. So angle 2 is 110 degrees. So that's supplementary angles. Okay, now we need to talk about lines for a minute before we get back into some more angles. Okay, perpendicular and parallel. Okay, most of us already know what these words mean, but we need to make sure everybody's on the same page. Okay, perpendicular lines form a right angle. Okay, so this is like a T. They make a right angle. Okay, parallel lines never intersect. They never touch each other because they have the same slope or the same angle. Okay, now notice on perpendicular lines they have to tell you that one of them's right angle, and once you know that, then you know that it's a perpendicular line. On the parallel lines, notice I have these extra little arrows in the middle of the lines. Well, that's what's telling me that they're parallel. Okay, so it's kind of like sometimes things aren't drawn to scale, sometimes lines aren't drawn perfect either. But if it has the little box, it means it's a right angle. It means these two lines are perpendicular. If it has these little arrows in the middle of the line, then it means these two lines are parallel, even if you don't think they look like they are. They might not be drawn that great. Alright, so I'm going to number these lines. I have line number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, we have to be able to write that these lines are perpendicular and parallel. Okay, and read. Okay, so the way we write perpendicular looks like this. Line 1 is perpendicular to line 2. This is the symbol for perpendicular. Okay, so if you see that symbol, you have to know that it means perpendicular. And the same thing for parallel. Okay, looks kind of like an 11, right? Well, it's just two parallel lines. That's the symbol for parallel. So line 3 is parallel to line 4. Okay, you have to know these two symbols. You have to be able to read them. Okay, now one more type of line that we need to talk about is called a transversal. And a transversal is just a line that crosses two or more lines. Okay, now this comes in very important when it goes across a set of parallel lines. Okay, if it's crossing two random lines, it doesn't do much. Okay, but if it's crossing two parallel lines, then we know a lot about it. Okay, so in this case, line number 5 is a transversal because it crossed two lines. Okay. Now we're going to look at this scenario in a little more depth. Okay, a lot more depth actually. Okay, so first thing you should notice is that I have two parallel lines. I know they're parallel because they have the little arrows here. in the middle of the line. And then I have a transversal going across those two parallel lines. Now notice, I went ahead and numbered all these angles because we're going to talk about how these angles are related to each other. So I numbered them angle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? Alright, so I've got two parallel lines and I've got a transversal. Okay, which caused 8 angles. Alright, so we're going to look at these 8 angles. Alright, these 4 angles are called my interior angles. Okay, obviously they're called interior angles because they're on the inside. They're in between the parallel lines. Okay, these 4 are called my exterior angles. Obviously because they're on the outside of the parallel lines. Okay, so I have interior angles in between the parallel lines and exterior angles outside the parallel lines. Alright, now here's a couple more definitions. Okay, the first one is alternate interior angles. Alright, now this says that alternate interior angles are congruent. Okay, well that lets me know they're the same, but what are they? Well, alternate interior. Well, interior, so I know they're in here. Interior. Okay, now what does alternate mean? It means like the other side or switching back and forth. So alternate interior means you're going from an interior angle across to the other side, to the other interior angle. So angle number 4 and angle number 6 are alternate interior angles. So that means angle number 4 is congruent to angle number 6. And the same thing for 3 and 5. They're alternate interior, so angle number 3 is congruent to angle number 5. Okay, which means angle 4 equals angle 6 and angle 3 equals angle 5. Alright. The next one is similar. It's called alternate exterior angles. And they are congruent as well. Okay, and the same idea. This time we're talking about exterior lines. Okay, so I go from one exterior across to the other side on the exterior. So angle 2 and angle 8 are alternate exterior angles. So angle 2 and angle 8 are congruent. And angle 1 and across to the other exterior, angle 7. Those are exterior angles. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 7. Alright, and next we have corresponding angles. Okay, corresponding angles are also congruent. Okay, now notice a lot of these things are congruent. Alternate interior are congruent. Alternate exterior are congruent. Corresponding are congruent. Okay, so congruent is easy to do. Everything's equal. You just have to know where to find them. Okay, which ones are equal to each other. Okay, so the hardest part is remembering where they go. All right, now corresponding means kind of the same. Which one goes with it? Okay, so if I look at these 4 angles and these 4 angles, and I said, okay, which one goes with number 1? Which one is in the same spot over here that number 1 is over here? Well, number 1 and number 5 are in the same spot. They're both kind of on the left. The bottom left, if you will. Bottom left. Okay, so they're in the same spot, so they're corresponding, which means angle 1 is congruent to angle 5. Alright, what about angle 2? Angle 2 is in the same spot that angle 6 is. So angle 2 and angle 6 are corresponding, and they're congruent. Same thing with 3 and 7, because they're on the top right. So they're congruent as well. And then which one goes with 4? Angle 8. So that means angle 4 and angle 8 are also congruent. Okay. Now, we already talked about what adjacent angles were. Now, when we have two parallel lines with a transversal, all adjacent angles are supplementary. Okay, which means angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary, which means angle 1 plus angle 2 equals 180. That's why I put this example here. But it's not just these two. Angle 2 and angle 3, they're supplementary. Angle 5 and angle 6. Angle 4 and angle 1. Angle 7 and angle 8. Any two angles beside each other, adjacent to each other, are supplementary, and they add to 180. Alright, and then last one. Okay, all vertical angles are also congruent. Okay, like the example, 1 and 3 are across from each other, so they are vertical angles, so they are congruent. They're not the only ones. 2 and 4 are vertical, they're congruent. 5 and 7, 6 and 8. Okay, so notice, look again. Alternate interior, congruent. Alternate exterior, congruent. Corresponding, congruent. Vertical, congruent. Almost everything is just congruent, which just means it's the same. The only thing that's not is adjacent angles, and they're supplementary. So the hardest thing you're going to have to do is find supplementary angles. As long as you know all the relationships, this is fairly simple. Okay, now let's look at another example of that, but with some numbers in it, to see if it can make a little more sense. Okay, now let's say that I just told you here's parallel lines and my transversal going across it, and if I just told you that this angle was 50 degrees, okay, then that's all you need to know to find all 8 of these angles, okay, or 7 others, because I already gave you one. You can find all of them. Okay, think about this one to this one. What relationship do they have? From this angle to this angle, they're corresponding angles. Well, that means they're congruent. So that means they're the same. So if this one's 50, then this one's 50. Okay? And then what angle does this angle, or what relationship does this angle have to this one over here? They're alternate exterior angles. Alternate exterior are congruent. So that must mean that they're the same. So this one must be 50 as well. Oh, and notice, these two are vertical, so they should be the same, and they are. So that's good. Alright, and what relationship does this angle have with this angle? They're alternate interior. So they're congruent. So this one must be 50 as well. Oh, and these two are vertical, so we knew they had to be the same anyway. So that was pretty easy. And these two are corresponding, so they should be the same. So all 4 of these angles are the same. Half of my angles were the same as the one I gave you. Alright, but what about the other ones? Well, what do we know about 2 angles right beside each other, 2 adjacent angles? They're supplementary. Okay, so these two have to add to 180. Well, what do I have to add to 50 to get 180? 130. So this angle is 130. And if this one is 130, this one's a vertical angle, so it must be the same. So it must be 130 as well. Right? And then this one must be 130 because I could look at it one of two ways. It's an alternate interior, so it's got to be the same, or it's a corresponding angle to this one. So they must be the same. Either way, it's still 130. Okay, and then the last one is also 130 because it's a vertical angle here, or it's a corresponding angle here, or it's an alternate exterior angle here. Either way, notice what I have. I have 4 angles that are the same, and then the other 4 angles are all supplementary to them. Okay, this isn't that hard. It might look hard. It might be a lot to remember. It is a lot to remember. Okay, but mathematically it's not hard. This is fairly simple. Okay, so now I'm going to give you some problems and see if you can solve them. Okay, so the first one, it says if the measure of angle 7 equals 20 degrees, then find the measure of angle 3 and the measure of angle 5. And number 2 says if angle 1 was 105 degrees, find the measure of angle 4 and the measure of angle 6. Okay? Now, first thing I want to note is these are 2 totally separate problems, so they don't go together. Okay? So you can't look at 7 and 1 say they should be the same because they're alternate exterior. Okay? Number 1 is a problem, and then number 2 is a totally separate problem. All right? But see if you can find the missing angles. All right. So, number 1. First thing is I know that angle 7 is 120. So I'm going to go ahead and put 120 degrees here. All right, I'm looking for angle 3. Well, angle 3 and 7 are corresponding angles. So that means that they're congruent. They're the same. Okay, so angle 3 is also 120 degrees. All right, and then angle 5 I could look at 2 different ways. Okay, it's a vertical angle to angle 7, so it's congruent. Or now that I know angle 3, it's alternate interior to angle 3, so they're congruent. Either way, it's also 120 because it's a vertical angle or alternate interior to angle number 3. Alright, so now looking at number 2. Again, remember these are totally separate problems. Okay, so if angle 1 was 105 degrees, I'm looking for angle 4 and angle 6. Well, angle 1 and angle 4 are right beside each other. That means they're supplementary. They're adjacent, so they're supplementary. So that means they have to add up to 180. Well, I've got 105. That means I need to add 75 to it to get 180. So angle 4 is 75 degrees. Now I'm looking for number 6. Number 6 is alternate exterior to angle 4. So that means it's going to be congruent to angle 4. And is also 75 degrees. So that's all you're doing with transversals, is finding the relationships between those 8 angles. Now for some practice problems. Okay, you need to find the missing angles. Okay, on each problem, you're given some of the angles, and you're asked to find an angle. Okay, so using the relationships that we've talked about today, you should be able to find the missing angles. All right, let's look at number 1. Okay, what do you notice about number 1? Okay, they make a straight line. They're adjacent, right? But they're a special one because they make a straight line. Okay, they are supplementary, which means they have to add up to 180. Well, what do I have to add to 140 to get to 180? I have to add 40 degrees. So this angle is 40 degrees. All right, number 2. Again, I have adjacent angles because they share a vertex and a side. Okay, but this time, oh look, they make a right angle together. So that means that this is complementary angles. And complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. Okay, so what do I need to add to get 90? Well, 70 plus 20 is 90, so this angle is 20. Now number 3. This time I don't have adjacent angles. They're not beside each other. They're across from each other. What's that called? Well, that's vertical angles. And what do we know about vertical angles? Vertical angles are congruent. So if that angle is 30, then so is this angle. Okay, and then number 4, the last one, it tells me that angle ABC is 110 degrees. That means this whole big angle is 110 degrees. Okay, and these two angles are adjacent because they share a vertex and a side. So they are adjacent. Okay, and we know that adjacent angles always add up to the big angle. Okay, now here again we had adjacent angles, but since they were supplementary, we knew they added up to 180. These were complementary, so we knew they added up to 90. This time it had to tell you what they added up to because it wasn't a special adjacent angle, they're just adjacent. But I still know what they add up to. They add up to 110. Okay, so if the whole thing is 110 and this angle is 40, then what does this one have to be? What do I add to this to get 110? It's 70 degrees. So if this one's 40, this one's 70, then the whole thing would be 110. Okay, so those are our basic angle pairs. Okay, it's just numbers. You find whether they're supplementary, complementary, congruent, or whatever, and then you move on from there. Alright, last one. This one's kind of hard though. Okay, this one actually brings some algebra into the angles. Okay, it's very similar to the last question though. Okay, I have adjacent angles. Okay, but this time my angles are x degrees and 2x plus 23 degrees. And I know that the measure of angle ABC equals 164 degrees. Now, that's similar to the last one because we knew the total angle, we knew one of the angles, and we had to find the other one. So we're going to do this similarly. Okay, I know that these two angles are adjacent because they share a vertex and a side. Okay, so that means I know that they add up to equal the total. So I'm just going to add them. Now this time I have to do it algebraically though because I have a lot of variables here. But all I did was 2x plus 23 plus x equals 164. Now I can solve. So I've got 2x plus x, well that's 3x plus 23 equals 164. And now it's just a two-step equation. I need to subtract the 23. That gives me 3x equals 141. And I need to divide by 3. And I get x equals 47. So we found the value of x. Now, we can take it one step further, though, and actually find what the measure of the angles are. Well, since this one's x, that one's easy. Okay, because since it's x, it's just 47 degrees, since x is 47. Now this one, though, I actually have to plug the x back in. And I have to do 2 times 47 plus 23, and that gives me 117 degrees. Okay, and one last check to make sure that I know I'm right is if I add 117 and 47, I do get 164, so I know that those are the right angles. Okay, so this is a lot of vocabulary. The main thing you have to do is make sure that you understand and can use the vocabulary. And then from there, you can work on the math. But the math is fairly simple as long as you know the vocabulary.